On March 24, 1998, a 23-year-old woman named Amy Lynn Bradley vanished from a cruise ship in the Caribbean. She did not leave a note. She did not say goodbye. She did not leave behind anything that settled what happened to her. She was simply there one moment and gone the next, on a ship full of people with nowhere obvious to disappear to. It was supposed to be a family holiday of sun, music, drinks, and sea air. Instead, it became the beginning of a mystery that still has no ending. This video is based on publicly reported information about an unsolved case. Some details involve allegations and unconfirmed sightings, and no single theory has been proven. Amy, a vibrant 23-year-old recent college graduate from Virginia, a former lifeguard who was athletic, outgoing, and deeply close with her family, had boarded Royal Caribbean's Rhapsody of the Seas with her parents Ron and Iva and brother Brad after the ship left San Juan, Puerto Rico. And what makes this case linger is not just that Amy disappeared, it is where she disappeared from. A cruise ship is not a lonely road. It is not a remote forest. It is not a place where someone should be able to vanish cleanly. It is a floating world of cabins, corridors, staff, security, passengers, cameras, decks, and routines. In theory, it should have been one of the hardest places on Earth to disappear from. Amy was not described as someone on the edge of a breakdown or drifting through life without direction. Accounts of her life describe a young woman full of energy and plans, someone who loved the water and cherished time with her family. From the very beginning, the people who loved her most did not believe she had simply chosen to walk away from everything without a word. The night before she vanished, Amy spent time with her brother at the ship's nightclub. There was music. There was dancing. She was also seen interacting with members of the ship's band, including bassist Alistair "Yellow" Douglas. Crew members and passengers mixed in the early hours while most of the ship slept. Later, attention would turn to the people she had been seen with that night, because once a case has no answer, every face in the background starts to matter. Around 3:40 a.m., her keycard recorded her returning to the family cabin with her brother Brad after they talked on the balcony. At about 5:30 a.m., her father, Ron, awoke and saw her legs stretched out on a lounge chair outside, assuming she was asleep. It was an ordinary sight that would become one of the most painful details, because when he woke again around 6 a.m., she was gone. Her cigarettes and lighter missing, the balcony door ajar, her sandals left behind. Somewhere inside that narrow half hour, the whole mystery was born. That window is what makes the case so unsettling. 30 minutes is nothing. 30 minutes is the gap between thinking someone is asleep and realizing they have vanished. 30 minutes is short enough to feel impossible and long enough for almost anything to happen if the right person was in the right place at the wrong time. One theory is the simplest: that Amy went overboard. A ship at sea is dangerous. Railings do not make a person invincible. Water does not return every body. And because the ocean can erase so much, some people have always believed the case may be tragic, but not mysterious. That she fell, and the sea did the rest. But the overboard theory has never fully satisfied the people closest to the case. There was no confirmed moment of a fall. No witness who saw her go into the water, no physical evidence that finally shut the door on every other possibility. In a case like this, absence becomes its own kind of evidence, and sometimes its own kind of torment. Another theory was suicide. That possibility was discussed early, as it often is when someone disappears at sea. But again, the people who knew Amy pushed back hard. They pointed to who she was, what she had ahead of her, and how little in her behavior seemed to support that conclusion. Over time, the suicide theory remained possible to some, but convincing to very few. And then there is the theory that refuses to die. Abduction. The idea that Amy did not vanish into the ocean at all, but into someone's hands. That she was taken in the final hours before the ship docked at Curaçao, perhaps with help from someone on board. It is the darkest explanation in the case, and the one that keeps resurfacing because of what came later. Part of what gives that theory weight is the timing. Amy disappeared just before the ship was due in port. And, according to later reporting, her family believed the response in those early hours was too slow, passenger announcements and thorough searches being delayed until after many people had already disembarked in Curaçao. If Amy was still on board, that delay mattered. If someone meant to move her off the ship, it mattered even more. That is the cruel geometry of this case. If Amy fell, the sea swallowed the truth. If Amy was taken, the crowd did. Either way, those first moments were everything. The first search, the first announcement, the first decisions made by people who did not yet understand that this was not a temporary confusion. This was the beginning of a case that would haunt her family for decades. There were also reports that Amy had been seen with band member Alistair "Yellow" Douglas not long before she disappeared. That detail drew attention because when investigators do not have a body, a confession, or a final confirmed route, they begin with contact. Who was near her? Who spoke to her? Who noticed her? Who had time with her while everyone else was looking the other way? But suspicion is not proof. No theory in this case has ever fully crossed that line. Not the idea of an accident, not the idea of suicide, not the idea of kidnapping by staff, passengers, or anyone else. Every path leads somewhere unsettling, then stops. Every answer seems almost possible, but never final. That is what gives this story its grip. It never closes. And then came the alleged sightings. Over the years, people claimed they had seen Amy in Curaçao and elsewhere in the Caribbean. These reports did not solve the case, but they changed the emotional center of it. Because once there is even a possibility that the missing person survived, the mystery stops being only about death. It becomes about captivity, fear, and time stolen in silence. One of the most chilling claims came from a U.S. Navy petty officer who later said that in 1999, a woman in a brothel in Curaçao approached him and said she was Amy Bradley. According to his account, she asked for help and said she was being held against her will. Investigators looked into the claim, but it never produced evidence strong enough to resolve the case. Still, it remains one of the most disturbing chapters in Amy's story. There were also later photographs that the Bradley family believed might show Amy in sexual exploitation. Again, nothing was conclusively verified, and that may be the most infuriating pattern in the entire case. The clues are never solid enough to deliver justice, but they are never weak enough to let the family rest. They sit in that terrible middle ground where hope and horror feed each other. That is why this case never settled into the past, because it did not become a single accepted tragedy. It stayed split, half in the ocean, half in the shadows of a trafficking theory, half in reported sightings, half in unanswered questions about what happened on that ship before daylight fully broke. Most unsolved cases lean in one direction over time. Amy Bradley's never really did. This is not a case where you can lay out the evidence and arrive neatly at one ending. It is a case where every answer leaves something behind. If Amy fell, where is the final certainty? If she jumped, what truly supports it? If she was taken, how was it done so quickly, so cleanly, and in plain sight of an entire floating city? There is something uniquely terrifying about a disappearance at sea. On land, a person can leave footprints, CCTV, roads, doorways, and witnesses. At sea, the setting itself conspires against memory. Water hides, distance distorts, noise fades. And once a ship reaches port, the world changes all at once. New people come in, old people step out. The scene dissolves before the truth can harden. Amy Bradley vanished in the space between night and morning, between a balcony and a shoreline, between what should have been an ordinary family holiday and a question no one has ever been able to answer. More than 2 decades later, the mystery still stands in that same terrible place. Not solved, not closed, just waiting for the one piece of truth that never came back with the tide. And maybe that is the real horror here. Not just that Amy disappeared, but that somebody may know exactly what happened and has stayed silent for all these years. On a ship full of music, movement, and people, one young woman vanished before sunrise. And if the truth was seen that morning, then the mystery survived not because it was unknowable, but because it was kept. Additional witnesses later claimed they saw Amy on an upper deck with Alistair "Yellow" Douglas between 5:30 and 5:45 a.m. Around the same window her father noticed she was missing. Some accounts described her accepting a drink from him. These reports added layers of suspicion, but also contradiction, as Douglas maintained he had left the party much earlier that night. The family has long criticized how the ship handled those critical early hours. Searches were conducted, yet announcements to passengers were delayed until the vessel had already begun disembarking in Curaçao. By then, potential witnesses or even Amy herself could have slipped away into the port chaos, leaving the floating city to continue its schedule as if nothing had changed. Years after the disappearance, Amy was declared legally dead in 2010, so the family could begin to move forward with estate matters. Yet her loved ones never accepted that as the final word. They continued appearing on television programs, hiring private investigators, and maintaining pressure on authorities to treat the case as active. The July 2025 Netflix documentary triggered an enormous response. Hundreds of new tips flooded into the FBI and the Bradley family. Several were labeled very significant, including possible trafficking connections and fresh sighting information that investigators continue to vet even now. In early 2026, the FBI dramatically increased its reward to $100,000 for information leading to Amy's recovery or the arrest and conviction of anyone responsible. The Bureau has also interviewed individuals with known ties to Caribbean trafficking networks, signaling that the abduction theory remains very much alive in the official investigation. Amy's brother, Brad, has stayed vocal in interviews since the documentary aired. He has shared that the family still believes she was taken alive and may still be out there. He has spoken about the emotional toll of living with both hope and dread, never knowing if a new lead will finally bring answers or another dead end. Other reported developments include a flagged IP address from a public computer in a Caribbean casino that accessed sites connected to the case, as well as unverified claims of recent sightings. While none have been confirmed, each one keeps the family searching and the public engaged after nearly 3 decades. In the end, the Amy Bradley case refuses to fade. It lingers as a reminder of how quickly safety can dissolve at sea and how long silence can endure. Her family continues to hope that someone, somewhere, holds the missing piece and will one day choose to speak. Until then, the mystery sails on.